The recording has started.
All right, welcome everyone to this bi-weekly meeting of the Ecma TC54-TG2 on the standardization of package URL or Perl. Reminder for everyone, we have a code of conduct and you are supposed to abide by this code of conduct, and this meeting is recording and will be published on YouTube. Welcome, Matt. We're recording, just so you know. Okay. First thing, maybe we can look briefly at last meeting minutes. Let me paste a link for that. They've been published in the TC54 repo as usual.
The link is in the running notes as well.
Yeah, okay, good. Sorry. Yeah, that's cool. So I'll make sure I post the full link there too. If you have any, so I've posted the link there. If you have any objections, if you're okay, we'll consider this meeting approved. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, meetings are approved. Meeting notes of previous meeting are approved. Second is agenda. So let's do a roll call to see what we want to put on the agenda. You can add your and update your information in the running meeting notes, by the way. So Steve, anything you want to bring up?
I don't think so. I'm just happy to be here.
Okay, great. Salve.
Well, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, Piotr, something you want to bring up?
No.
Matt.
Nothing here.
Okay. On my side, I'd like to make sure we keep you abreast of the progress. And John, something you want to bring up specifically? Maybe you want to bring up discuss the big pending issues on coding. Probably would be a good idea.
Well, I could talk a little bit about qualifiers and percent encoding progress. There are so many others that I'd be happy to talk about if someone has a particular request, but
Okay.
that's been my main focus for quite a while now.
Okay. What I suggest is I'm going to share my screen so we can look specifically at pull request 398. It's scary because I know the name by heart. I know the number by heart. That's when you start knowing the number of a pull request by heart, you spend way too much time on it. So I'm putting the link in the chat there, and I'm going to share my screen so we can look at that together. It's important because I think when we're going over the merge of this PR, everything's going to go fairly smoothly downhill from that point on, hopefully. So there's a lot of discussion. We're topping 100 commands there, right? I don't want any one of us to go through the duress of viewing anything. I'm gonna hide my bookmark toolbar. It's probably a security risk that you see all these weird 2 letters bookmarks that I maintain. Let me make sure we look at one thing, which is the final file in its final format. And there's 2 things here. The first section is the qualifiers section here, which it's already been thoroughly discussed and commented. It's an improved version of the previous thing. It's fairly concise and brief, not much more than before, but it's been made much more precise, and it refers to the all important character encoding section. So there's been little to no change to this section here for a couple of weeks now because everybody is kind of fine with this. And let's go to the character encoding section. Where is that?
Now the character encoding was a different ticket number though, right?
Yes, but there's no way we can, there's a bazillion of character encoding sections and tickets. But here the idea is, since we need absolutely to clarify this for qualifiers, we're putting it here. We can extract it in a separate discussion. That's fine. That's actually something John and I discussed earlier this week. For the sake of having at least a discussion, it's in this same PR. And to your point, it's probably be good to have it separate. The gist of this new approach is to first spell out in both concise and clear fashion what are the characters we allow. We call them permitted characters. And the important thing here, so we can debate about which one is in this list and making sure we don't break compatibility backwards with existing implementation too much. But the gist of it is you have a list of permitted characters, which is almost to the level of a regular expression, as we discussed and as you suggested, Matt, in the previous meeting. And we are saying that everything else should be % coded, meaning we don't allow any other characters in a Perl. They must be UTF and then % coded. And then, in addition, there's specific permitted characters and % encoding rules that apply to each component. So that's the first thing. Then we define the list of what we call Perl separators. It helps, and it mimics what we had before as a section, but we explain where they're used. And we adopted this style of putting the character here and its name as a parenthesis afterwards. There's plenty of other styles. I don't know if you ever looked at the one used, for instance, by the What working group. There's some beauty to this here because it's very precise, but also it makes it really hard to read and process because there's you cannot make sense of, well, I find it super hard to code. We could go to that route if folks prefer this. In all cases, somebody wants to speak, please speak.
Yeah. So I think this separator, this is the most conservative way we can approach it. So many. I think in RFC 3986, the subdelimiters also don't need to be encoded, like parentheses, and brackets.
Yeah. So RFC. So that's so anyway. We define Perl separators for now. They're not used right now in the encoding section yet. They're going to be further refined in each of the components definitions separately. And then we're basically saying, hey, person encoding rules, we use RFC 3986. And we're saying further that each component defines when and how to apply person encoding. So we're booting basically back to each component. And when it's required, we're saying all characters must be encoded except for the column. And the discussion we'll need to have and crystallize over the next few days is going to be just what we don't want to be encoded universally. And then if we can agree on this, there's a few discussion whether we should put, for instance, colon and slash. And
one question.
Yes.
The list there kind of looks like the list of reserved characters
Kind of like,
already.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. Agreed.
Wouldn't it make sense to just say we use the same as the reserved characters in RFC 3986 with the following differences, or with no differences?
Yeah, so that could be one approach. I'm fine to do that, but that could work. So that's one approach to say we use this, but they go then about reserve subdelimiter 0. There's another approach, which is if you look at the encoding section, person
Yeah,
encoding.
this is similar, except it provides the complementary set of
Yeah.
what
So
instead
that's
of what's
another
allowed,
approach.
what needs to be encoded.
So here they define basically each set as the one that's there and there and there, which could be and cannot be. So conceptually, that's where we are going. But rather than booting every details of the sets to another place, we just want to define the sets here.
Yeah, wouldn't it just be like the thing I'm thinking about now is when people implement this, it's a lot easier to just use an existing library, because it says there in the spec that we're using the same ways of encoding and limiters and reserved characters as in there, and you don't have to think about any special cases that need to be not encoded or stuff like that, which would add complexity to the implementation.
Solveig, are you just so I understand, are you suggesting that various people who are implementing or will implement the spec are using 3986 in other circumstances, and it would be easier for them to do the same here? The reason I ask is because according to at least some of the feedback we've gotten from other community members, all the implementations have differences.
Yeah.
And everybody, I think, I can't predict this, but I suspect that whatever we come up with, everybody will need to do a little bit of change, and no one will be completely happy. Just my 2 cents worth.
Yeah, no, I can only speak for CPAN, and we have a couple of commonly used libraries out there that do stuff like this, and they've been around since the beginning of the web, so they are super strict in how they follow the specs and the RFCs. So using those as a base would be incredibly convenient and trustworthy, because it's existing code that has literally worked for 20 years.
Could somebody provide language then? Because personally, I've gone through 4 or 5 proposals, all of which have been rejected, which is fine, but nobody who is rejected has provided better language. And so here we are.
Yeah, so there's
Java has a problem.
I know Java, for
the
instance,
older ones with an addition of 2 separators that are allowed.
Yeah, so the gist of it is that, for instance, Python used to use RFC 2996, which is the predecessors, and they moved to 3986. Java, as far as I know, is still using 2396.
Yeah, it's mostly 2396 with some changes that are adapted to 4986, but it's not compliant.
So I want to make sure we're wherever we're going, there's going to be, as John said, a bit of suffering. We want to minimize the suffering, making sure it's clear for everyone. Oh yeah, I'm sorry if I make you cough like that. Was that you, perhaps, coughing?
Yeah, sorry.
No, scoffing, just like, oh, encoding. What a problem. Okay, so sorry for the segue.
No,
I
agree
with you.
Whatever.
I agree with you, Salve, here that this, it's probably not the right one, actually, URI encode. That's not a standard module. I don't know if it's the right one. In all case.
No, this is probably the right one, actually.
Okay, no, it's just because it was under Mitoon's things, which kind of weird.
On CPAN, a release is always connected to the account who makes makes the release. Like every release has a release manager, so you can have several people. You find the package under several people, so it's not per project; it's per person.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
generally speaking, there's things we've always encoded. For instance, square brackets. I'm not clear about what we ever did with tilde, but we need to make sure we define the class. We've always encoded also parentheses. We've always encoded plus. And I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing. It's just that there's been an established practice and want to make sure we adapt to that. In all cases, the level of effort to implement the encoding in Perl compared to what's in the standard library should be very, very minimum. So for instance, I was looking specifically at what's been done on the Python side as an example. And it's unfortunate, but to match whatever was written with the spec and whatever written in the spec may have been an issue, a problem, or in many ways, is that we basically quote, then unquote columns. Just so it's clear. It's terrible implementation, but in all cases, it's fairly simple.
Yeah, Copilot gives the same for Java. It uses something that encodes a URL and then replaces the plus with %20.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but
Yeah,
let's make sure we invite Copilot to the meeting next time.
Yeah,
I don't know this person.
Just to reiterate, the bottom line for me is, one is, since this is a URL, we have to be clear to reference the correct RFCs, like I think it's like 9100 for HTTP or whatever, to make sure they adhere to those things. The problem is that, what came to me is that it's okay to encode spaces and other things in the path, but it's not necessarily okay to encode things in a scheme specific host address. That's where the problem happens. If this is really supposed to be a URL. So there's a so a URL, you have to reference a separate RFC to determine what characters are viable in the host address portion. And that's what most people miss, and most common language encoding programs miss.
No, I get that. With one twist here, I've made a lot of mistakes in these encoding sections, but one thing I think makes the problem you just raised a potential issue is that we don't have a host. There's no host. There's no authority in.
Well, I don't know.
There's only a path. We're literally, there's no authority in this URL, which it's perfectly okay to have no authority. For instance, the tail URLs don't have an authority, and which means we bypass all the issues of host name encoding, punycode, and all that stuff, because it just doesn't exist. It's not supported. It doesn't exist there.
Yeah, I'm not prepared to say yes or no to that, depending on what context it's used in. But second, the main point for me is give me regex. I'll just say it again. Give me the regex to test against.
Yeah. So we can easily derive a regex here. The difficulty with the regex, as always, is which standard, but we're just listing characters, so it's going to be easy peasy in all cases.
There is only one standard. Come on.
Yeah. Can we add all the separators of RFC 3996 to this set?
No,
because so the parenthesis needs to be encoded, right?
It's always been encoded, yes. The parentheses, the square brackets have always been encoded. And here we need to double check, but I'm not sure to which extent these were already encoded in most implementations. So there's need to be a little bit of review there. The whole point being that we're saying all
But
characters.
those unreserved, according to the RFC, are equivalent. Encoded, non-encoded, you can do whatever you want. The URI is equivalent if you encode or unencode it.
Yeah. Go ahead, speak. Unless it's somebody that wants to just
Oh,
speak.
sorry, it's Matt again. So I had to catch up to what you were saying. So you're saying basically the PKG, we don't have one. So the question is, do we want to establish one? Do you want to? You're saying basically the PKG scheme?
Yes.
Not official.
It's actually there's been exchange done with the YANA to register it as a scheme. I just need to add one thing here. There's a pending issue to make sure we address in the provisional registration of the scheme, so they're aware it's there. Nobody's going to stop on that and register it for their own. And to be registered as an official provisional scheme, we just need to provide a threat model, security implication.
So,
And
so
the-
I guess so. So here's so I'm fully invested in this now.
Yeah.
So the problem is that we're establishing a scheme name. It sounds like.
Yeah.
We're letting people under that scheme define basically the first part of that scheme is basically an identifier for the package authority.
Yep.
Okay. The problem is that do we require the package authority to give us a indirectly basically give us a valid URL host address?
Okay.
So
Can you?
Alpine means bitbucket.org and APK means, that,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that should be spelled out because in my mind, the value of all this is that it's network accessible, that I need to go to the canonical repository,
Yeah.
with the reference to the package and its version and all this stuff to be able to get the provenance and commit history and all those things, right? So we need to spell out, I think, this indirection that even though we have a new scheme and we're giving you within that scheme, we're allowing you to create basically a short name or a reference to a package repository, that package repository must be addressable with a valid URL domain. A host
Well,
address.
So
except
not
there's no
everyone
domain.
will be.
There's
Not
no
everyone
domain.
will be locatable, though. I mean, we got the SWID, we got the generic type. Not
Yeah.
every single one will be locatable. Now, I do think it is worth exploring maybe a default assumption that if you are creating a Perl type, that it is locatable unless you state otherwise, or some other kind of thing that indicates whether or not this Perl type is going to be locatable or not.
I would
Because-
say from a specification language that we should consider the should, shalls, must, and things, and saying it should be or it must be except these exceptions. I think I would rather say that should be the main course. It should, must, or should be those things. Should be those things with these exceptions.
Yeah.
That's why I think we should.
Because in my experience, the majority of organizations use Perl specifically for an identifier. And I believe the most advanced organizations use it as an identifier and a locator. And for those advanced organizations, a locator is extremely important.
It's extremely important going forward. And I think that should be the precedent and should be the should language. And I think that we should list known exceptions that are in our own spec or definitions.
So we can have a one sentence here under the type that explains exactly what you just said, which is fine.
Yeah, I think I think with having strong should language and saying that, saying here are the known exceptions. That's all I'm probably asking for. So.
Well, so the
I mean, if
should be in the
you go through this
type
type page, this page you're on right now, if there are
Yeah.
known exceptions or exceptions we've carved out in the current spec today, just list them. I mean, if there are, things that are reserved or things that are whatever, but we should not encourage, whatever wording we need to do to not encourage non-locatable ones in the future is paramount, in my opinion, paramount.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there, and I'm with you because if you cannot resolve a Perl, that limits a lot of the value there.
Yeah. No. I mean, wherever you think it belongs, I think that the more prominent placement of that should, and that advice, the better. Or
Okay,
or doing it in multiple places. Yeah.
What I suggest we do it is here on Perl types towards the top.
Yes.
Explaining exactly before the non-Perl type says special Perl types, and we spelled it afterwards, but saying add some specific wording here to the Perl types, so we're clear about that. I like that.
Super lovely. Thank you, Philippe. Thank you.
I will add that in the Perl type definition schema as well, that whether or not the type is locatable or not.
That's a good point. Yes, definitely.
I will add that. Now, Matt, ping me after this sometime later today, because I think there's going to be Perl types that are not necessarily going to be binary in terms of locatability, if that's a word. There's going to be some Perl types where it's binary, yes or no. There's going to be some Perl types that the location is a maybe, depending on a few of the qualifiers that might be used. So
You've got my curiosity raised. We can talk immediately after this call if you want.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, like generic with download URL, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
But that's locatable by definition.
Yeah, but you need to have download URL.
Yes. Yeah. Generic with a download URL is essentially
Locatable, right?
well, it's essentially harmless and useless. It's you could put no Perl that would be about the same. Everything is a guess, so that's a CPE basically. Also in the spec, we should.
Thank you, Philippe. I appreciate this again.
No, that's very useful. That's actually I cannot fathom why it's never been. We never discussed that before, and there's no indication there. That actually sounds very so. That's
well. That's why these calls are important, because
exactly the spec, and we should define for each type.
Yeah, I think one of the corner cases on this is, you can derive locatability based on whether or not the Perl type has a default, repository, right? But if the ecosystem actually doesn't default to anything and allows everything, I don't know if we have any of those today, but we certainly will in the future if we don't already.
I think
And
scanning through the existing list to list the exceptions, and then maybe tightening up wording around those things, or trying to group them together and give them a name.
Yeah.
Somebody wants to speak?
Somebody what?
So there's somebody that raised a hand or wanted to say something. I see UCP, sorry. Welcome. I don't know if you want to bring something to the agenda.
Yeah, Giuseppe was invited by me. He's the guy implementing packager on
Yeah. I've seen that. So if he wants to speak, he's welcome to. Okay, so we have this issue there. So just getting back to this
Philippe,
wording
do you have
here.
Philippe, you have an issue number for the notes?
Oh, sorry, I'm pasting that. It's 435. Let me paste
Thank you.
that in the
Thank
chat here.
Just a general comment. I really like the improvements that you made with the qualifiers and the explicit language around character encoding. I think that's a step in the right direction. I think that's beautiful. I like a lot of discussion that led to that, but that's good. I do think it's going to be absolutely essential that we work with all the implementations, including the ones that we know about in the Perl GitHub repository organization, but also all the other implementations that may exist in outside of our GitHub organization, because these character encoding issues are critically important for compatibility. So we're going to have to reach out to those folks.
Yeah, completely. So that's part of the plan. So maybe the better way here is really to split. So we can potentially subtract this section from this PR entirely. No. Push that so we can close on Perl qualifiers and merge that. Push that wording in a new PR, specifically on encoding, that will deal only with encoding, and crystallize the discussion there, and also making sure we run the test on all the existing implementation. I'm sure Matt Donoghue will love doing that. He's been super helpful there with these rules. And again, the goal is going to be, to your point, Salve, to have as much as, sorry, I was about to say as much disruption as possible. I wanted to say the opposite. I wanted to say as little disruption as possible. And again, I think here the biggest discussion is going to be here. For instance, so it's already been accepted that we don't encode columns across the board. Do we want to say we don't encode / across the board? That's another discussion. But at least if we keep that separate, then we can very quickly zoom in on subpath, version, name, and namespace, which are the remaining components that we need to go through.
Right, and remember that the encoding, we need to finish the encoding so that we can deal with the proper, we have to spell out, in my opinion, the proper way to construct a test object, and we need to fix the tests.
Yeah.
And those, we can't touch those until we've got agreement, however it's defined, on what the encoding rules are. And again, there'll be people who won't be happy, and I won't name them, but they'll be there.
Yeah, but I think in all cases, you see, if I was looking at this example of the small words in the Python code here, we probably have small words like that in many implementations. We can come, we can do a kind of a SWAT action to do a hackathon for a day or two.
Yeah.
And just look collectively at each of these implementation, submit a PR to help everyone move forward.
Well, since the encoding rules in this PR seem very simple, it's easier to write it from scratch, an implementation.
Yeah,
I suspect, though, that
people reuse the implementations because the RFC is very complex. But
the RFC is super complex. It's like,
but here it's easy. So it's easier to rewrite and for ecosystems like Java that does not have it, you just write it from scratch.
Yeah, but you already have in the case of say RFC 3986 in Java, you likely have I don't know many repos. Well, you already have 3 at least, and there's probably more than that. Just looking at GitHub, and 2 of them.
Yeah, but it's not worth the effort. The implementation is 20 lines.
Yeah. So
Right, yes.
maybe
Because
that's-
all the complexity of the RFC is not there. You don't need to remember if you need to encode it or not. If it's globally, if the rules are applied globally, you just do the same thing every time.
Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, few lines.
So the RFC is complex because you need to remember: can I pat a slash here? Do I need to encode it? Can I pat?
Yeah. So we're trying eventually to make it a bit simpler there. All right. So that's it for me. I mean, basically here. So if you agree, what we can do is just subtract this encoding section to a separate per PR entirely. Move forwards to merge the qualifier section, which is fairly simple and non-controversial. It's been discussed at great length. And again, the fact that we can probably just unify the treatment for each of the characters. So is this treatment to say the name followed by the character between quotes? Is it something that makes sense? Do we want to use double quotes instead? Maybe double quotes. That's closer to Matt's beloved regex. That's a regex, right? Is it a Perl regex, Salve and Giuseppe?
Bacchus in our form, I think we're looking at.
It's a BNF.
BNF.
Which is a form of a regex, right?
No, it's a
No.
what's it?
No.
Okay. Let's not start a purist question. Discussion. Sorry. Forget about that. But the question: do you prefer single or double quotes?
Double.
Okay. So
Single for well, never mind. So
Well, what the double quotes?
single for single characters. So
okay,
That's
RFC use always double quote. That's why I was asking that. It's just
well, that's yeah. The question is, are you referencing it via code or via BNF conventions?
yeah. Okay. So we can leave it this way then. But then we're just spelling the name of the characters and then putting it afterwards consistently throughout. So we may not agree, or someone may not agree on the style, and then we can change the style. But at least we're consistent throughout in how it's handled.
Yeah, I think there is a little bug in the definition of type and the characters that are, because in the definition of type we say that plus is allowed, but plus is not allowed in the encoding section.
That's a very good point.
If you look at the encoding section, plus was not among the characters that were allowed.
I don't know how this came to be here. Oh man.
Probably from URLs.
Yeah, no, that's probably gonna.
Oh, so probably the easiest is to remove the plus. Who needs that complication?
Yes.
There has been some intensive.
It's fairly recent, so maybe that was something that slipped in there. Okay, let me make sure we have an issue for that. We don't want to forget about it.
It's the popular, I guess I was looking for the right words, the popular convention to use in place of spaces.
Can you repeat, sorry?
A popular convention used in place of spaces, but the preferred mechanism is properly encoding the space character.
Yeah. But so we're trying to avoid that entirely there.
Absolutely.
So revisit plus in the type. So was it really introduced here?
I think it's, so I guess I'm trying to read what AI is telling me. which is historically the plus sign was used by shorthand for spaces in query strings, but %20 is now the preferred use for consistency. Yeah, so definitely getting rid of it.
I don't understand where this plus came to be. Let me look at the parent and dive back in history. No, so let me go back. Well, let's not waste your time there.
No, wait. You gotta use blame. Just go to the file and use blame.
Yeah. I need to go blame one at a time.
That's a horrible word, blame. But anyway.
Yeah. That's.
Yeah.
Well,
you
anyway,
can
since
also use
the
git
source code
praise.
defines which are the valid values of type, we can restrict it even further to be a language identifier, alphanumeric plus underscore.
Okay, prior blame. And
You're gonna blame yourself, Philippe?
prior blame, yes. Yeah, I'm likely to be able to do that. I don't know why is this UI doesn't work. I'm clicking there. Okay, now it's working. And then namespace type. Okay. Namespace type. Oh, okay, so I'm to blame. Oh man, okay.
Yeah, well, anyway, it's not registered, and there are no types with plus in the names.
Yeah. So that's the type.
Yeah. Looks like a word.
Excuse me.
Take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. Don't let that get worse.
Okay. I'm gonna assign this to me. Good catch. One more there, and it went unnoticed when we looked at the type. So going back to this, sorry, getting out of the blame. I think we're here. Yes. Just to recap, we're going to move this section on encoding to a separate PR. So it won't be there anymore. And we have something for qualifiers that's mergeable. And basically, if we go back to the whole PR, the changes there will be really focused on this section here and the FAQ and nothing else.
Great.
It's good.
Yeah, so I don't know, qualifiers is a query string composed of, I know that's actually interesting. I don't know if there's any benefits to spell the fact it's a query string or not.
Martin Persich added a comment on this probably an hour or two ago. I only note that he did that. I didn't read it, but he doesn't like the use of the word string or components, I think.
Well, components, I hate the word component also, personally. It just happens it's the wording that's being used throughout all the existing specification on URLs and URIs. They're
Yeah, we
talking-
we saw it when we were looking at 3986, and it's used
Yeah.
throughout.
they're
And
talking about component.
I misspoke slightly. Martin's issue. Martin's comment rather, I think, had to do with the use of the whatever we currently say, Philippe. He proposed the use of subcomponents, which is something you and I discussed as well. So, yeah.
Okay, so I'm fine to have a separate discussion on component and use another words, but then that would be something that we can do towards the end, saying, hey, we hate the word component. We define it once at the top of the spec, and we use whatever we want as a word. A part or segment, maybe a part would be a bit for. Component is loaded, especially when it comes to, for instance, CycloneDX is like, then you have a component within components and they're defined by components. That doesn't help.
It's very meta.
Exactly. Yeah, so here actually, I don't know, by the way, just since you guys look at that, I'm probably fine with this change suggested by Jan. The fact it's a query string has a specific meaning in the URL and RFC standards, but it's not really relevant because we are redefining how it's being parsed and what are the separators and how we encode them, even if 90%, 99% of it is similar to what you have in a query string. The query string in URLs don't say what is a key value pair, for instance. They just say it's a query string, whatever. You do whatever you want with it.
I think this is a fine change, in my opinion.
Okay. Good. All right. So that's it for now, unless you guys have any other.
Yeah, I had a question that we had in the Java implementation. So when the specs says lowercase,
Yes.
we are talking about Unicode lowercasing or ASCII, because well, the problem is that if you have a Unicode letter that's not ASCII, do we lowercase it or? Should we define? But I think that actually all the elements that whose normal form is lowercase are ASCII. So maybe for implementation.
So in the new updated definition, we're saying the key must be composed of only of lowercase ASCII letters and numbers. So it's very, very specific.
Yeah, but I think the parser part accepts uppercase keys and says that they might be converted to lowercase. So
that's
yeah,
correct. That's correct. But right now, that's something we had discussed a bit in the past before you joined the fray, is to separate the strict specification, which is here,
from the
parsing recommendation, which you may elect to have a parser that is super strict and rejects anything that doesn't match the spec. Or what we suggest in the parsing section is to have a parser that's able to recover and normalize things which are common small mistakes that we can recover from without any harm done.
Yeah. So the problem I have in the parser part that says convert to lowercase is I'm afraid that developers will use the locally dependent lowercasing, which in Turkish converts the ASCII I into.
Oh, you were talking about the Turkish I. The Turkish I. I love the Turkish I.
Yes, so I was wondering if that should be more explicit. So
it's interesting, but just as a
if you're around code, or if you have a Turkish team member, you discover it very fast. Otherwise, it can be years before implementation. So
One way to resolve that is to be clear about the requirements for output, like producing package URLs, and be strict on that, and then allow parsers to be more lax in what they can read and consume. That would let people follow the robustness principle. I think that would make sense. But the production or creation of package URLs need to be as strict as possible, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So the good thing is that in the specific case of this section here, key, it's lowercase ASCII character. So there's no Turkish I.
Yeah.
But it's funny because I remember, not fondly actually, because it was really a head scratcher, which wasted several days.
Well, I posted a link, but apparently there's this is news to me, is that with Unicode is called asymmetric lowercasing.
Okay.
So the problem is larger than I realized.
No, and I remember exactly. I mean, this kind of weird decomposition here actually created bugs at scale in some weird and odd case, which literally wrecked the whole.
Yeah, but it's just free locale in the world. They are not very popular, so the bug can be undetected for years until somebody with a Turkish locale checks it. So maybe we should have some test cases for that.
Yeah, we could. But as much as we can, if we can avoid this by forcing things to be lowercase, then, because really there's no. So as an example, even a lenient recovering parser shouldn't be able to recover from a key that's not ASCII in the first place.
But the uppercase I is ASCII. It's when you transform it to lowercase that it becomes non-ASCII.
No, but it's not Turkish. The Turkish uppercase I and lowercase I is not ASCII. We're already in the world of Unicode.
So in the Turkish locale, the ASCII uppercase I is converted into a lowercase I with our dot.
But that's not US ASCII anymore.
Oh, yes, so the lowercase is not US ASCII, but the uppercase, yes. So the locale converts an ASCII character into something that's not ASCII, and the uppercase does the same for the lowercase I ASCII. The ASCII I becomes something that's not US ASCII.
We're gonna ban Perl in Turkey then.
Yeah, no, or do not switch encoding when changing a case.
Yeah. Okay, so
you should not rely on the default locale.
Yeah, Piotr, maybe you want to take a quick stab at that in an issue, at least describe the problem, if you don't mind, in a couple of sentences, so we don't lose that. I hope we will never face the issue, but at least make sure we have it on hand. But yeah, and I remember not only that it was a problem. Interesting.
Yeah, it's more of an anecdote, but you get. I cannot find if lest. Oh, are you Turkish? Yes, a known bug.
Okay, yeah. No, I won't blame them for that, but that's really weird how they came to this lowercasing world. Anyway. Thank you for your time. I think we've done good progress. We'll do these changes, work to make sure we can merge the qualifier section quickly, and then we can move on to the big ones afterwards and address also the encoding separately. We have a good base for encoding. I don't think we'll need a lot of changes there. So small progress, a little bit of time. And once we have encoding ready, there's a lot of pending PRs, which either become moot that we can boot or that we can merge. And to your point, John, especially all the ones around updating the test case. One last thing before we part, and a small question for you, Steve. There's been a slight discussion, or not really a debate or discussion, but there's a PR to, let me show you that here. Where are we? There's a PR from Jan. Here, which suggests to split the test suite, which
You're
is
not
just
sharing your screen. Philippe, you're not sharing your screen.
Oops, sorry. I'm sharing my screen again then. And sorry for going a bit over time. Thank you for staying there for a minute. So sharing my screen again. So there's this PR here from Jan Kovalec, which basically says we had a single JavaScript, a single JSON file for test suite, and want to split that in one file for the spec, one file for the spec, and one file for each types. And the discussion we need to have, Steve, and maybe we can take it offline, is whether it would make sense to actually have the specification for the test part of that single JSON for a type.
I was thinking the exact same thing. Prior to me even knowing that this thing existed, I haven't seen this.
Yeah.
But I've actually been thinking about actually putting the test in the type definition schema itself.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a tiny thing here to do, but in terms of refining this, but the specification should be in the, I think, in the same, and eventually the test should be just part of the type definition. If we have a bunch of tests which are specific for type, they should come with the type definition.
Yeah,
they're essentially are the type definition in a way. Okay. I'll suggest that we merge the two at some point of time, so we can do some intermediate step to split these, and in any case, I think it makes sense to have that in one place. All right.
Yeah.
That's
Philippe,
it for today.
No, wait. Philippe Salve has asked a question. Do we have a soft deadline for PR 398?
Not really, but I'd like to merge that by middle of next week at the latest. Once we've removed the encoding section, and even sooner if we can, and start fresh the discussion on encoding, where we have a clean, crisp section that's been well thought out, which is not perfect, but at least it's clean and sharp as a base.
Thank you.
Everyone, thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, night, or weekend, wherever you are in the world.
Thanks all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye now.
I'm shutting off the recording now.
Yeah, thank you.